Alright guys, what is going on? Without much of an introduction, this is how to replace your CSC in under 10 minutes in your 370Z. Yeah, that's it. Let's get to it. 3, 2, 1, go. Alright guys, first things first, you want to make sure you go ahead and jack up your car. Get your car up as high as you possibly can. Get your jack all the way to the top that it will go to, and then make sure to put jack stands in all four corners of the car. 2 in front, 2 in back. I actually had some extra under there just in case. Last thing you want to do is die. And as you can see here, I had some extra ones I threw up there. Next thing, you're going to need some PB Blaster to get those rusted bolts on your stock exhaust system off. If it's not stock, you might be okay. All the bolts here are 14 millimeters. And with PB Blaster and a breaker bar, came off just fine. You're only going to be pulling your exhaust off from the catalytic converter back. You also don't have to pull your muffler off. I didn't pull my muffler off. You can just do the center section and the Y pipe that goes to the mufflers. Everything was 14 millimeter except for the 2 bolts with the hangers. Those are 12s, and then you just drop it down. Nice and easy. Nothing hard at all. Next thing, you want to get your drive shaft. This was pretty simple. You just need a 17 millimeter wrench, not a socket. It won't fit in there. I had to stack 2 wrenches on top of each other in order to get enough leverage. Then you simply just pull the drive shaft out from the back, and it's pretty straightforward. Nothing too crazy there. I have some words here that I recorded. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
I started to work on the wiring harness. I've got most of it loosened. It's all mostly secured by brackets and 10 millimeter bolts. You'll simply remove said 10 millimeter bolts and then take off the connectors. There's one here, and there's another one way back here, but you're not actually able to get to it without dropping the transmission a little bit, and so it's going to be one of the last ones that I'm going to grab. I'll get that once I actually lower it about an inch, and then you can get my hand in there, and I can really get that clip. The clip is on like the opposite side, so you got your hand kind of like this up in the transmission tunnel. And it's really, really uncomfortable. It's really hard to pinch it and pull it out at the same time. So I'm going to drop it about an inch. That should give me the room that I need to do. Next thing is you want to follow the wiring harness all the way up after getting those 2. And you'll have another bracket right here. Like I said, 10 millimeter bolt. You've got 2 10 millimeter bolts connecting this bigger bracket here. Then you've got your O2 sensors, which are mounted here. And they go to a bracket right here. Most of these bolts are 14 millimeter bolts that you'll be working with up here. There's this 14 millimeter bolt, these 2 14 millimeter bolts, and then these 14 millimeter nuts. And there's kind of like this whole big brace that goes on right here. Went ahead and removed that and got that out of my way. Then you can deal with this clutch line here. You've got your clutch line, which sits like this. And what you want to do is you want to get a 2-liter bottle or something equivalent that you can drain the fluid into. And if you have an assistant, get them up in the car. Basically, you want to try and actuate the pedal a couple of times, get the fluid out of the reservoir and down here, and then basically disconnect those 2 lines, and you're good to go there.
Alright guys, at this point we're going to start removing the rest of the bolts around the transmission. We're starting on the starter side. There's 2 bolts there. Remove those, push the transmission back, get out of the way. I'm also using this paper plate to keep track of where all my bolts are, so all the same ones go in the same place. There is going to be a total of 12 bolts. There's going to be 8 on the transmission side and 4 down at the very bottom on the engine side. There's a lot of room to work with and get my hands pretty much all the way around the engine. In order to get the 4 at the bottom, you got to remove this cover. There is another total of 8 nuts and bolts there that we have to remove, and then that gives you access to the bottom 4 bolts. And those are the shortest bolts of them all, so they're pretty easy to keep track of. I did find that removing this 10 millimeter bolt for the power steering lines helped give me a little bit more leverage to get my socket wrench in there. Just a word of advice. Like I said, there's quite a bit of room. Best thing to do to get the very top bolts is lay on your back and kind of hug and put both of your arms around. Don't forget this ventilation tube. It's the very top bolt that is on the transmission. You don't want to forget that. After this, we're going to move inside, start disassembling some of the interior. You really just got to get rid of the center console, and really a lot of it's really easy. You kind of can just pull up on the shifter surround. It pops out. You can undo as much as they did here. This is borrowed from Moto IQ. I'll put the link down in the description. Just don't forget this bolt that connects it to the transmission itself, and it all simply just pops out. Simple and easy. At this point, you're pretty much ready to drop the transmission. Go ahead and get yourself a jack and start removing these the cross member for the transmission. Don't forget that one wired connection if you weren't able to get it previously, like we had talked about. But at this point, you're basically just going to lower the transmission. And another word of advice: don't do what I did and spill all the gear oil. Get yourself a plastic baggie with some paper towels. That way, the gear oil and everything can go in there. And just in case, just have a piece of cardboard down. That way, it catches it like I did myself.
Alright guys, so here it is. After you get everything from the shipping company, this is everything that you need to do the full CSC swap with the Zspeed Performance products from ConceptZperformance. So essentially what's going on is you got the upgraded slave cylinder if you decided to go with one. This is what it looks like compared to the stock one. The first thing that you'll notice when you're taking this out of the box is there's this nice sign that says to not compress or clean or basically play with this whatsoever, otherwise it's going to wash out the grease that's in the bearing and cause failure, which is the whole reason why you're doing this in the first place, is because that one failed. So don't mess with that. But I went ahead and got it out. I want to show you what all comes in the package. As you can see, I opted for the upgraded. Actually, you have to go with these. You can't just opt with them, but these are the upgraded braided lines. And when I say I opted for, I also got the upgraded stainless steel line that runs underneath the exhaust with the added heat protection around that. And then also, while you're doing this job, you need your master cylinder as well. So the master cylinder is getting replaced. We have the clutch slave cylinder. We also got Motul 660, which is also sold on their website. About 500 milliliters should do the job. That way you can flush out any excess fluid that still might be in the system. You got to make sure to do a full flush all the way through the line. And also you're going to have to bleed out obviously both the master cylinder and the slave cylinder. So it comes with everything you need. The first thing I noticed, on OEM one, you've got the major rubber seal that's in the center there. I believe that's kind of the main seal that fails and causes the leak. The next thing that you get with the package is your bleeder that'll go on the transmission. It comes with all the nuts and bolts in order for you to install that, along with a package with instructions. Make sure to follow those to a T. If you guys want this to be warranted by ConceptZperformance, you got to make sure that you follow everything to a T, and they do disclaim on their website that you have to replace the master cylinder when doing this job. So I went ahead and made sure to do this job all the way to the T like they recommend, because the last thing we want to fail is this CSC again or the master cylinder. We don't want to deal with that, and from what I've been reading and what I can gather, it seems that these two failures kind of go hand in hand. If one fails, the other is prone to fail pretty much immediately afterwards, and the biggest reason for that is it seems to contaminate all of your clutch fluid whenever you have it leak out. It'll get dirt and debris in there, and it'll mix with the remainder of the fluid that's in your line, and that's what eats away and causes these bearings to fail. So make sure you guys do everything you need to do. It's a little bit of an investment, but it's well worth it. It'll make sure that your car is going to stay on the road for as long as possible. So I'm going to get back under the car. We're going to go ahead and slap this in the transmission, get the transmission back in the car, and we're going to try and knock this out, hopefully, by the end of today.
Alright, at this point you're back underneath the car. You're going to start out by getting the two lines coming from the concentric slave cylinder, putting them through the dust boot. Then you're just going to slide the slave cylinder on the input shaft of the transmission, and you're going to try and get the dust boot back on where it needs to be. But then you want to start tightening the Torx bolts. There's two of them total. Make sure to get those tightened. Don't over tighten them because you're going to round out the heads. Next you're going to fix the dust boot. Like I said, get that as perfect as possible, and then grab that banjo bolt, run it through the bleeder line up to the T fitting, and then simply mount it. The great thing is this kit comes with perfect hardware, so you can mount both the line and the bleeder in the stock locations where the old lines used to run, just like you see here. It's honestly it's pretty fantastic. After this, you're going to be basically doing everything in reverse, throwing the transmission up and getting everything fastened basically in exactly the reverse order. As you see here, I had some weights that I stacked up, and that helped me do it by myself. I kind of just did it incrementally until I got all the way up to the top, and then pushed it forward a little bit and got it to line up. Next, you're going to be wanting to replace the master cylinder. It's really hard to record just because of how tight of a space this is, but essentially there's two bolts on the master cylinder itself. I found it easiest to be able to push the pedal down, get an extension here, and I was kind of able to get the top bolt. Bottom bolt wasn't too hard at all, but once you get the two bolts, it basically comes out after removing the clutch line that attaches to it on the other side of the firewall, and I took actually the whole reservoir off with it, put it on the new one. Basically just put the new one in after you're done with that, reattach the line, and then make sure to grab your brake fluid, Motul 660, whatever you bought, and flush the old clutch line that runs all the way down before you attach it to the new concentric slave cylinder. After you attach it to the new concentric slave cylinder, go ahead and flush out the system entirely, and make sure to do a proper bleed. I did a gravity bleed first, and then I did a normal bleeding system as you would, preferably with someone that you can help push the pedal while you're down there undoing everything. Make sure that it does build pressure and it doesn't indeed work, and if it doesn't, you want to go ahead and give ConceptZperformance a call immediately if it's not building pressure and spitting out any of the excess air that's in the system, because that's probably not working at that point. But that's basically it, guys. guess once you sit there and do everything in reverse, you're basically done. Go ahead and give your car a nice start. Here's what it sounds like without the stock exhaust on, if you want to hear, because I just did it just to test. That's basically it. If you guys like this, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We might do a couple of these in the future. I definitely wanted to make a video that was basically just straight to the cut, no BS, not overly long. So we just went right over the 10 minutes. So with my talking, we'll say this is technically under 10 minutes. So if you guys have any questions or concerns, please put them down in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.